I get a lot of comments about the quality of my costuming. So I figured I would make this video on the 3 things that most Hollywood filmmakers use to make quality, believable costumes for their characters on screen. And some films don't even do it at all, and you can always tell. At the end of this video, I'm going to be going over my process for basically setting up all of this. If any of that is of interest to you, then welcome to the Guild, where we help you be your best nerdy self. If you'd like to skip all of the stuff and just get to actually putting the costume together, then go ahead and skip to this timestamp. But for the rest of you, let's get into it. Noise is the first thing that you are going to want to really pay attention to whenever you're making your costume. And no, I'm not talking about the music in that one Star Wars movie. Nor am I talking about the sounds that your kit actually makes. But rather, I'm talking about the visual appearance of your outfit, how everything works together, the colors, and the accessories that you use. You don't just want to smash together a bunch of vaguely medieval or Renaissance or fantasy things into one outfit because there's going to be a lot of jarring things going on, especially when it comes to color. Putting a lot of clashing colors into an outfit is really going to make it stand out for sure, but it's also not really going to look cinematic in its appearance. Oftentimes, less is more. So the very first thing that you should do if you are deciding to put a new costume together is going to be consulting the color wheel. This right here is the color wheel. It shows all of the primary and tertiary colors, and this one specifically is actually going to be showing them in their brightest hues to their darkest hues, probably all the way down to black if you went far enough in. So after you look at your color wheel, pick one color, just one. For me, the primary color in my outfit is going to be blue. If we look at blue and we look directly across the color wheel, we're going to find orange. Orange is going to be the complementary color of blue. Whenever you put blue and orange together, they tend to look good unless there's like a bunch of it. So instead of going with orange, I just went with brown, which is just orange with more black in it. And so as we start to add the shade to orange, we get to brown. And that was it. That is all I chose to go with my outfit was brown and orange, and then this small amount of yellow over here. And while yellow and blue aren't necessarily complementary or tertiary colors, they're actually clashing colors. It helps this waistband sort of stick out a little bit more and draws attention downward toward my waist. So I used it very sparingly, but it is there. Now you don't have to just go with a primary color and a complementary color. Instead, we can go with a primary color and a tertiary color. For instance, greens and browns tend to go really well together. Just look at all of this. And gray, apparently, for some reason. So you can either go with earthy tones, you can go with primary and complementary colors, or you can go with tertiary colors. So for instance, blues and greens tend to go pretty well together because they're directly next to each other on the color wheel. But that's enough talking about the color wheel. Let's start talking about accessories. Whenever we begin adding accessories to the actual outfit, we want to ask ourselves one very important question. Does this make sense? And do I have to explain it, or is it something that people can infer? For instance, I don't have to explain why I'm wearing armor. Pretty self-explanatory. However, if I randomly put a flower on my back, I might have to explain why there's a flower on my back. Unless the Fae did it. Damn those Fae. And also try to avoid accessories that really just don't feel like clothing. I know armor isn't necessarily clothing, and it doesn't really feel like clothing, but this outfit that I've put together sits on my body nice enough that I barely notice that it's there. The way that the cloth fits, the way that everything sits on me actually works really well, and it really separates clothing from costume. And speaking of costumes, do not buy costumes. Do not do it. You are absolutely going to regret buying a costume. I cannot tell you the number of times I have seen costumes fail, or they just look terrible. Like, you look at someone and you're like, that is definitely a costume. Now, one exception to this is going to be really high quality costumes. There are some costumes out there that are made that are basically like mine. They're already clothing. But at that point, it stops being a costume and starts being clothing. At the end of the day, 90% of store-bought costumes are not going to look like clothing, they're not going to feel like clothing, and they are not going to fit like clothing does. All of these are going to become extremely important after 3 or 4 hours of being out in the heat, moving around, trying to sit down, trying to do things in your kit. So it would be best to just completely avoid it. Either source from quality websites like Medieval Collectibles or Varilla's or somewhere like that, or find patterns and either have somebody else make them or buy a sewing machine and learn to make them yourself. Speaking of patterns, I have a pattern available for the Lions Guild Gambeson that is applicable to a wide variety of different costume pieces, such as this crop top piece that I've made, the actual Gambeson itself, and the sort of jacket shirt thing that I wear in some of my other videos. And you can find that linked down below or over on my website at ko-fi.com/The Lions Guild, where you can become a monthly member, but more on that later. Now, is doing it this way going to be a little bit more expensive? Yes. But is it worth it? Hell yes. It's going to look a lot better, it is going to feel a lot better, and you're going to be able to move around and do stuff all day long in quality clothing. I am notorious for going to my state Renaissance Festival in this kit, minus this one, this is new, but in my Gambeson, and being able to walk around all day, even on some of the hottest days, as long as I remember to drink water and to put some wet linen cloth around my neck to cool the blood going to my brain, because last year I was sort of heat stroking out there. I had to change. But get quality, and you will thank me. Now, do you remember at the beginning of the video when I mentioned things that some movies just don't do that they probably should? Well, that is going to be making your costumes feel lived in. From a distance, this costume doesn't look super spectacular. But as we start to get up closer to it, you can see the worn out pieces on my armor. You can see the off-colored discolorations of different parts of my kit, and if you looked at it right, you could see where, like, this is a little bit lighter than the rest of it is. These parts are obviously not the same blue that they once were, and this is what helps make a costume feel lived in. Nothing is worse than seeing characters in the Avatar: The Last Airbender series walking around for what is apparently months, and it looks like all of their clothes just came out of the frickin' dry cleaners. Now, apparently they are fixing that. These are some images from Season 2, but even the original M. Night Shyamalan Last Airbender movie, as god-awful as it was, even they distressed the clothing so it looked more like clothing and looked less like a costume that they just unbagged. Now, it kind of made sense when Aang was very first out of the bubble. Right before he got frozen, he was out living in the air temple. They were probably doing their laundry every single day. They probably had methods to get rid of stains. They're monks. They don't really have a lot else to do other than chores and martial arts and apparently goofing off with cakes. But after several months of being out in the wilderness, they should not look like they just got done with dry cleaning. And the same applies to other movie franchises as well. For instance, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series did the exact same frickin' thing. Now, you can get away, for all of you filmmakers out there, you can get away with not distressing characters. If there's a character way in the background, like in this shot, these people in the background probably aren't really in need of distressing of their outfits. They're not close enough to be able to see. But this freaking guy, right here, right next to Obi-Wan Kenobi, you should be able to see the dirt and the stains on his clothing. There's no freaking way this guy living out in the desert has access to gallons and gallons and gallons of fresh water to keep all of his clothes completely clean all of the time. Sorry, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Side tangent over. Make sure that you're doing something to distress your clothing and make it look lived in. Now, there's a variety of ways to do this, and you can go super, super distressed for those really grimy, almost urchin-looking characters, or you can do it a much lighter way like I did mine. And my favorite way to do this is to wear your costume. It's that simple. If you wore your costume out into the wilderness, rolled around on the ground, did things that your character's going to be doing, you will very easily figure out where on the outfit needs attention, and then you can speed up the process a little bit by just distressing them with a tea or coffee method. In my opinion, not distressing a character's costume, not making the costume look lived in, is one of the most egregious sins that they can make. Other than completely changing the names of the characters. I'm looking at you, M. Night Shyamalan. His name isn't freaking on! Sorry, got a little carried away there. Now, I promised you guys that I would go over my specific method for when I'm putting a new costume together, as I've gone through quite a lot of costumes since I started doing content creation. The very first thing that you're going to want to do is to build your underlayer. These aren't really your underwear, but it's what's going to be worn under your armor that people are still going to see. These are going to be things like your pants and your shirt. My recommendation is that you stick with muted, earthy tones. Things that aren't bright colors, that don't stand out too much, because people really aren't going to be seeing a lot of it, but they are going to be seeing it. So make sure that it matches the rest of your costume. Remember back to the color wheel and keep it as a tertiary or complementary color shade. Next up is going to be your footwear. Now, I got extremely lucky when I happened to purchase these on Amazon, but they no longer sell these, and I did end up having to replace the original leather hobnailed soles with some rubber ones because I use these a lot. But again, they still match the rest of my outfit. They're really worn on the bottom, but still look relatively well kept, because that fits with the rest of my costume. So whenever you're picking footwear, it is really hard to find good, affordable footwear, and you might end up having to spend a little bit more money on the footwear than you wanted to. A lot of real leather shoes are going to be expensive, so remember, if the price seems too good to be true, it probably is, and that applies to everything, but most commonly, leather shoes. Next up is going to be the keystone piece of your outfit. This is the primary thing that people are going to be seeing whenever they look at you. For me, that is the Lions Guild gambeson, or this shirt thing that I made, but it can really be anything. It is the primary focal point of your outfit, and it should be in your primary color. Making it your primary color is going to make it bold and visible. People are automatically going to be able to look at you and go, oh, that frickin' guy or girl. And like I said previously, make sure that you're sourcing from good websites. There's a lot of them out there, too many for me to remember for this video. So here's my call out for all of you people who are out there who've already been working in this field. Leave some links down for some of those really awesome websites down below. Now, once you have your keystone piece, this is what you're going to be building around. Whether it is just a simple tunic, or whether you've gone and gotten or built something that is much cooler looking, it is the center of the outfit, and you're going to be building accessories on top of it to make it look better. And speaking of accessories, that is where we get to the actual layering process. You could just buy yourself a pair of braces, buy yourself a belt and a pouch and a tankard clip, and head off to the Renaissance Festival. At this point, you've pretty much got a solid outfit, and you've only spent around $200. Depending if you bought footwear. If you didn't buy extra footwear, then you might have only spent like $80. Footwear is expensive. But if you are going to be putting on more accessories, for instance, you're going to be putting on armor, weapons, gloves, things of that nature, then we want to worry about layering. Now, I've put extra armor on top of my gambeson and armor up underneath of that. And so if we look right here, this is a perfect example. Everything that is in the shot right now is a great example of layering. So we have the gambeson underneath, and then we've got the armor sitting on top of that, and then we've got this extra armored piece sitting on top of that. And then if we look at my glove and bracer, these are two separate pieces. I've simply put the bracers on top of the gloves, and I get a lot of comments about that as well. People want to know where I get it, but I literally just layered gloves onto bracers. And it came out looking really good. These are your pretty standard sword gloves, which most of the stuff I'm wearing, you can find an affiliate link over in my bio that will either take you to what you need to make it or to where you can purchase it directly. Everything that I have linked over there is things that I use, that I trust, and that are relatively modular. Take some time to play around with the things that you have. Put on different layers. Try different combinations of things. Try making new stuff. Try adding random scraps of fabric. So you don't have to go crazy with all of it. Just, figure out what works. Put some things together. Try to avoid using costume clothing because it's not costume clothing and it is really noticeable. But that wraps up the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. And if you guys did enjoy it, then please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It would really help out the channel. And if you guys would like to help out the channel directly, then consider becoming a monthly member over on my website at coffee.com/The Lions Guild and get your name up here with these wonderful people. I'd like to give a special shout out to my first top tier member, Autumn Nance. Thank you very much for your contribution to the guild. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you around the guild.